Hey, this is Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in World Without End. This is the sequel to Pillars of the Earth, the board game and the book. Both have board games associated with them. World Without End has some really cool mechanisms. It's a competitive Euro game. And one of my favorite things, I'm going to mention two things. One of my favorite things is the action selection system. I love in games where the actions are simply described on cards, and so you don't really have to give a lot of details in advance while you're teaching the game. You can just say, okay, look at your cards. These are the actions that you have. I believe it was either 10 or 12 cards in the game, and throughout each round, every time you take a turn, simultaneously with all the other players, you pick one card that you haven't used yet that round to play, and then you pick one card to discard. So every time you're making this choice, it's a really interesting choice because you're not just choosing what you are doing, but you're also choosing what you're definitely not doing that round. But I just love that the actions are so simple. They're just simply described on the cards themselves. There's no action checklist to memorize or pour over. I really like this system. My favorite mechanism, and it ties into another video I did maybe a few months ago, a Sunday sit down about event systems. There's a really cool event system in World Without End, a competitive game where I don't see event cards, event systems as much. This is a fairly punishing game, but the event system is fairly rewarding for a couple reasons. One, so there are these event cards that you draw each round. When one player draws them, I believe it was each round. It might be each turn. It's been a few weeks since I played. It's either each turn or each round. Someone can correct me in the comments. But the active player chooses this card and reads the event. Usually there's a little bit of descriptive text, and then there's an event that happens. This says, place the Prior's Palace building project onto the game board. That can vary. Sometimes it can be something good, sometimes something bad. But the really cool thing here is that in each of the corners of the card, there's a reward, different rewards. And the active player positions this card so that the reward they want is facing them. And there are two elements to this. One, it's facing them. So say I really needed money, I might position this money towards me. But that in doing so, it means that the other player, the player to my left, gets this. The next player gets this. The player to my right gets this. So I love that this is, like, it feels rewarding right away because I'm getting this thing that I want. But at the same time, I'm kind of agonizing over what I'm giving the other players. When I played, I only played this once. I thought more about what I wanted rather than what I wanted to deny the other players. But it was in my head that other players kind of needed these other things. And if I was debating between two things, I might look at the other players. There's also something that's very difficult to describe without showing you on the board. But this arrow right here, you can see how it points to 1. There's a separate track on the board that advances 1 space because I had that arrow pointing there. So not only am I choosing the reward based on the direction in which I position this event card, but I'm also choosing some movement on this track, either 1, 2, 3, or 0. I won't go into what that track does because it doesn't really matter all that much for this description, but I love that there are so many interesting choices that go into this event card system because this movement on these tracks can also benefit you if you move it properly. So there might be times in the game where you say, I really wanted to move 3 spaces, but the reward, so I need to position this arrow facing that 3, but the reward, the corresponding reward, isn't exactly what I want, so I have to make a tough decision there. As you can see, this is just a really cool event card system. The one catch with it, obviously, is that it only works for up to 4 players. So I think you could probably do it with tiles, maybe do a hex tile if you have a 6-player game and have those different edges, corners of the hex facing different players. You could do that for a 6-player game. But just a really cool system, very rewarding in an otherwise fairly punishing game. That's World Without End, my favorite game mechanism. Thanks.